The Kentucky frontier is no place for the weak. It was a land of promise, but only for those willing to fight for it. In Episode 3, Simon Kenton ventures deeper into the wild, where danger lurks behind every tree and survival is never guaranteed. Tensions are rising, treaties are crumbling, and the line between friend and enemy is vanishing. Hard choices will test Simon like never before. The frontier is changing, so must he. Will he survive what comes next? This is the story of a man who has long shed the trappings of his former life. No longer a rebellious youth, Simon has become a scout, a guide, and at times, a reluctant warrior. The struggle is as real as the wilderness itself, and in this episode, our hero's journey takes him to the very edge of civilization, where the clash of cultures, broken treaties, and the surge of a revolution mark every day with the promise of change. A misdirected journey. March 12, 1775, Sunday. On a cool spring morning at the mouth of the Big Sandy, two young frontiersmen pulled their small canoe ashore amid the churn of muddy water and the cry of distant birds. Simon Kenton and his steadfast companion Tom Williams had come seeking the fabled Canelands. As they unloaded their meager supplies, a seasoned French trader named Peter Lorimy greeted them with a warm yet curious smile. "I did not expect to see you here. I thought you were bound for the Canelands." The trader explained that the creek they had been following was Cabin Creek, and that just a mile further down they would find the right route. With Lorimy's blessing and a sense of purpose, the two young men hastily wrapped up their trading and without a moment's delay, pushed off into the muddy river. The water splashed around their canoe as they navigated the twisting channel, each paddle stroke carrying them further from the familiar banks and closer to their destination. Discovery of the Canelands. After a mile of steady paddling, the creek widened into a gentle, meandering stream that brought Simon and Tom to a hidden camp. Here, amidst the cool, damp air of early afternoon, the two frontiersmen paused to catch their breath and set up a makeshift encampment. However, the promise of the Canelands tugged at Simon's heart, urging him to leave the safety of the camp and venture further into the unknown. With a silent nod to Tom, he slipped away along a path that led off the creek's edge. Before long, Simon found himself standing on the edge of a vast clearing. A sea of dry cane stretching out like a tapestry under the afternoon sun. The cane, tall and swaying, rose high above him, its golden hues blending with the green of distant hills. It was as though the land itself had been holding its breath for his arrival. In that moment, a fine, fat doe emerged from the thicket, moving with a quiet grace. Simon raised his rifle with practiced ease and with one swift, decisive shot, ended the doe's life. The sound of the shot echoed briefly over the open land. That evening, under a starry sky, Simon and Tom sat by a campfire, savoring young deer hams, their favorite meal. The air was filled with celebration. For Simon, the day's details were vivid in his mind. The scent of cane, the wind's rustle, and the wild beauty of the doe. In the firelight, he felt a deep connection to this land, sensing he had finally found his true home. New lands, new promises. March 17, 1775, Friday. A few days later, on an unusually warm spring day at a bustling riverbank near Limestone Creek, the frontier was alive with the hum of trade. Men from distant settlements bartered furs and supplies, their voices mingling with the sounds of the flowing river and the clatter of wooden carts. Among the crowd, rumors of a grand transaction reached Simon's ears. Tales of Judge Richard Henderson finalizing a massive land deal with the Cherokee at Sycamore Shoals. The prospect of a new nation stirred the hearts of all who listened. Henderson's dream of an empire, a country of his own, carved out from the wilderness, was both audacious and intoxicating. As the negotiations concluded, men began to speak excitedly of a place they would soon call Lexington. It was a turning point, a day when the frontier was not only a land of wild beauty and danger, but also a stage for political dreams and the forging of a new nation. Native Voices in the Wind, July 2nd, 1775, Saturday. In the fading light of a long summer day, the Shawnee Council gathered in a modest, log-built hall in Chillicothe town along the Little Miami River. The atmosphere was heavy with the scent of burning wood. Over 300 Shawnee chiefs, sub-chiefs, and delegates filled the room, their faces etched with determination and sorrow. At the center of the assembly, Chief Cornstalk, a man of quiet dignity and profound wisdom, prepared to address his people, his every word measured against the rising tide of anger. For hours, the chief spoke of the devastation caused by white settlers, the destruction of buffalo herds, the scorched earth where elk once roamed, and the disregard for sacred hunting grounds. Elder voices were subdued, weighed down by loss, while younger warriors seethed with indignation, eager for retribution. When it was his turn, Chief Cornstalk rose slowly, his soft voice commanding silence. He urged restraint, warning that open warfare could bring about an unstoppable tide of destruction. Yet, as tensions rose, a young warrior challenged him, igniting a clash of desires. The council departed divided, torn between vengeance and the wisdom of caution, a conflict that would continue to haunt both the Shawnee and the settlers. First Blood and Fading Innocence, September 1775. In the last days of summer, the frontier was shaken by an act of brutal violence that could not be undone. Simon Kenton and Tom Williams, returning to their once secure camp near the Canelands, discovered a charred, mutilated body of a settler named Hendricks, left smoldering atop a vast bed of coals. The camp's silence was abruptly broken, signaling a troubling shift in the fragile balance between peace and conflict. The shock of Hendricks' death spurred the two young frontiersmen into swift action. With grim determination, they dismantled their camp and set out on a journey to warn the surrounding forts of the impending danger. But it was during one solitary hunt, as Simon ventured near the banks of the Ohio, that he encountered the presence of an enemy. A Shawnee warrior emerged silently from the brush, rifle poised and eyes cold with lethal intent. Simon dove to the ground, reloaded his weapon, and fired a shot that marked his first kill. Simon stood frozen, burdened by the reality of taking a life. At this time, Simon realized that the price of freedom was paid in blood. Birth of a New Political Frontier, December 28, 1775, January 26, 1776. In the chill of late December, as winter's grip began to take hold of the frontier, a different kind of battle was being fought. A battle of wills and words that would shape the destiny of an emerging nation. In a modest settlement illuminated by the soft glow of a tallow candle, George Rogers Clark sat at a rough-hewn desk, writing a letter destined for the Continental Congress. His words were a plea for the recognition of the frontier as a part of a new political entity, a Kentucky county that would secure the protection and support of Virginia. Outside, hurried voices and determined footsteps filled the cold evening air as settlers gathered, their faces a mix of weariness and hope. The news of the Declaration of Independence spread rapidly. Among them, Simon Kenton, known for his navigation skills, became a sought-after figure for new arrivals seeking a future in these untamed lands. For Simon, the frontier was transforming into a fledgling nation. Each new settlement along the Kentucky River strengthened the promise of a new political order. Frontier Battles, July 30th, 1776 to early 1777. Under the relentless July sun, the bond between Simon Kenton and Tom Williams began to unravel. After years of hardship, Williams longed for the settled life of the East, leaving Simon alone to navigate the dangers of the frontier. But solitude offered no peace. The land was at war, and every day tested a man's will to survive. It was during one such battle that Simon Kenton crossed paths with a man whose name already carried weight, Daniel Boone. A legendary hunter, explorer, and leader, Boone had established Boonesboro, a vital outpost in Kentucky's wilderness. But even the most seasoned frontiersman was not immune to danger. One frigid morning, gunfire shattered the stillness as Boone and his men walked into an ambush. Trapped and outnumbered, the fight turned desperate. Amid the chaos, Kenton's steady hand felled an attacker poised to strike Boone down. Seizing the moment, he dragged the wounded frontiersman to cover, buying him the time needed to rally his men. By sunrise, the enemy had retreated. Catching his breath, Boone clasped Kenton's shoulder. "You've got the makings of a true frontiersman," he said, recognizing a kindred spirit. Secret Missions, June 1st to 7th, 1777. In the darkness of an early June night, beneath a tattered canvas in a cramped tent at a frontier fort, a meeting took place that would alter the course of the struggle on the western edge. George Rogers Clark, now a major tasked with the defense of Kentucky, gathered a select group of scouts and spies, men whose skills in tracking and stealth had been honed by the wilderness. The mood was somber, every face illuminated by the flickering light of a single lantern as Clark outlined his dangerous mission: to infiltrate British-held outposts and gather intelligence that might tilt the balance in their favor. Simon, alert and driven by a desire to protect the land he had come to love, listened intently as Clark's words filled the cramped space. Though the risk was immense, capture, execution, or worse, the call to serve was unquestionable. The scouts exchanged glances of unspoken understanding. This was not merely a mission, but a test of their very mettle. Each man felt the weight of the task ahead. At that moment, with the night pressing in from all sides, loyalty and courage were the only things that could light the way through the darkness. Simon's heart pounded in his chest as he prepared to leave the safety of the camp. He knew the secrets he would uncover could be the difference between life and death for the settlers who depended on him. With a final nod to his comrades, he stepped into the night, a solitary figure on a mission that could change the fate of the frontier. An act of betrayal. October 10th, 1777, Friday. On that crisp autumn day at Fort Randolph, there was a sense of unease lingering in the air. Under the banner of truce, Chief Cornstalk, accompanied by his son Elenipsico and the sub-chief Red Hawk, had come to discuss a final attempt at peace. The chamber where they were received was dimly lit. For a brief moment, Cornstalk's voice broke through the silence as he recounted the countless injuries inflicted upon his people and the broken promises. His words, laden with sorrow and resolve, hung in the air. Yet before he could finish his appeal, the door burst open violently. In an instant, the hope of reconciliation was shattered. The room erupted in chaos as soldiers, driven by suspicion and the hardened resolve of frontier warfare, seized Cornstalk and his companions. The air filled with the smell of gunpowder and rifle fire. In the final moments, as Cornstalk fell lifeless to the floor, the sound of multiple gunshots confirmed that honor had been traded for violence. 9 bullets rained down upon the great chief, extinguishing a voice that had long symbolized wisdom and restraint among his people. The loss of Cornstalk in such a manner sent a thirst for vengeance through the frontier, marking a turning point in the war. A precarious balance. December 31st, 1777, Wednesday. As winter swept across the frontier, the chill in the air matched the tension in the hearts of those at fragile outposts. On a bleak morning, with frost coating everything, Simon Kenton patrolled near a small, snow-covered settlement. The silence was broken by the crunch of his boots on frozen earth and distant calls of game. Loss and betrayal weighed heavily on his weathered face. Simon surveyed the signs of conflict. A charred clearing that had once been a camp, the shattered remnants of fortifications, and the persistent smell of blood in the cold air. Even as despair threatened to consume him, a strong sense of determination began to take hold. Simon returned to the settlement to share the news that, despite the calm of winter, the Shawnee were out for revenge. The long road ahead. As the year drew to a close, the frontier remained a land of stark contrasts: hope and hardship, opportunity and danger, freedom and bloodshed. In the dim light of winter, frontier leaders gathered in makeshift command posts, their faces lined with exhaustion, their voices heavy with the weight of uncertain days ahead. The fight for survival and for the dream of an independent land was far from over. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. Simon Kenton's story is far from over. His journey will lead him deeper into danger, discovery, and the relentless pursuit of freedom. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.